Hello, I'm Mark Hughes. Welcome to Disability Viewpoints. My guest today is Kelly McDyre from the Child Loss Foundation. She's got a lot of things to talk about, and we'll get going to that in a minute. Joan Willshire is our co-host today. Hi, Joan. Who's your guest today?
Today it's Jesse Gomez and Michelle Vrieze. They are both from the Metropolitan Center for Independent Living, and we are going to be talking fraud. As you know, Minnesota is just full of fraud these days, but we're going to be doing it from the perspective of the Minnesota Constitution and our rights.
That was formed on October 13th, 1857.
There you go.
Very good. We'll be back with more Disability Viewpoints in a moment. It'll be a busy half hour. Stay tuned.
Minnesota is talking fraud almost daily. And how is this impacting the disability community? We're going to address that today, and with me to talk about this issue and a lot of our other issues along with this is Jesse Gomez, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Center for Independent Living. Welcome.
Thank you, Joan.
So,
happy to be here.
It's just been fraud is everywhere in Minnesota, and I think one of the biggest things that's happening is the disability community is kind of being ignored and left out in terms of how is this impacting the services and their day-to-day life. So, which is why we brought you in here to kind of talk about where we're going with some of these issues from a public policy perspective.
Absolutely.
And we also have a guest with us, Michelle Vrieze, and you are the Assistant Director of Administration for MCIL, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, great. Well, welcome. And we are going to get the information right from you in terms of how the disability community is really being impacted. Because of your job, it sounds like you're talking to a lot of people every day that are being impacted, including yourself, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Well, Jesse, why don't you lay the framework here of what's really happening to our disability community right now with this fraud?
Thank you, Joan. And to talk about that, as a Center for Independent Living, we're a statutory nonprofit, not only by the federal government, by the state of Minnesota, Minnesota Statute 2688-01, Subdivision 8, Centers for Independent Living. 50% of our employees must be persons with disabilities. And so there's an expression, nothing about us without us. And so all of our work is really to assist people with overcoming barriers towards independent living. And in our work, what we see at Metropolitan Center for Independent Living is an increase of what we would call those service gaps. We have been working on the direct care workforce shortage crisis for a number of years, and today we know there are 53,000 direct care worker job gaps. So that means that people are really struggling to figure out how do they provide the sense of daily living when you know they may not have a PCA who can assist them with daily living. At some point, the framework is this, is that when you see a level of human suffering, at what point does it become a constitutional threshold of human suffering? And why I say that is because when you look at the Constitution for the state of Minnesota, adopted in October 13th, 1857, it says in the preamble, of course, "We the people of the state of Minnesota, grateful to God for our civil and religious liberties, and desiring to perpetuate its blessings and secure the same for ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution." And I thought, not through the whole Constitution, but Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 1, Object of Government. Now, there are three words here that I want to elevate in this conversation. And this is what the object of government says. It says, government is instituted for security, benefit, and protection of the people in whom all political power is inherent, together with the right to alter, modify, or reform government whenever required by the public good. Why is that important? Well, for certain federal and state services in Minnesota for people with disabilities and older adults, there is a $2,000 asset limitation for individuals and $3,000 for couples. But what most people don't realize is that was promulgated in federal law in 1983. That's been the same dollar limit. So when I discovered that, I realized we have more than a direct care crisis. We have a humanity crisis. We have a crisis of what does it mean in terms of oath of office when we look at these words of security, benefit, and protection. That asset limitation is forcing people to live in fear, to live in poverty. If there was a cost of living in there, that would be a $20,000 asset limitation.
Right, right.
So this is why we have to think about our world, our society, the Constitution as the basis for the rule of law. And so fiscal notes are important. And yes, we believe that the state and the federal government will work through to address waste, fraud, and abuse, to make certain that we take care of that. And we have to make certain today, right now, that people with disabilities receive the services that they need to live the fullest life, independent living. And so that's the issue, is how do we think about the services that are being impacted? Right now, there's a continuity of concern of those services in which people are living in fear. Do they have the services that they need? And I think that tees up our conversation about why this is important as well.
Right, right. Well, why don't we bring in Michelle to kind of start framing it up from the people with disabilities standpoint?
Sure. We have a saying at MCIL that is basically, it says that we sit on the bench with people when they're having tough times. And I've been doing that a lot with people who have disabilities that are served by the PCA College Service Corps, served by our agency. And even though there is waste, fraud, and abuse happening, and the directive was to eliminate that, many of our clients, myself included, often feel like they are not necessarily targets, but they're feeling abused by the whole system because they're afraid to leave their homes, they're afraid to use Metro Mobility, they're afraid to go to the doctor and get basic needs met that they have. Some of their PCAs are afraid to come to work because they're afraid that ICE might stop them. So this is really, it's deeper than the money and the fiscal impacts. It's impacting human lives, and that's sad, because we really need to be assisting and not creating this environment of anxiety and fear.
Just, do we have a number of the amount of people with disabilities this is probably impacting?
Well, when you look at 53,000 direct care job gap, that means literally thousands of people are living in fear. And what I appreciate, Joan, about Disability Viewpoints, this is among the only shows that I know of that are bringing to the community. It is my great hope that whether the governor, our elected officials, members of the Minnesota legislature really take a look at what we're talking about. I mean, there's other efforts, and we appreciate that. That I've recently been on Zoom and others, and so everybody is trying to do what they can.
Right.
But to really speak to this issue is to really elevate how are people faring. And thousands of people are having difficulty. Now, we know that the home and community-based services, that there are 14 areas that are properly being looked at, notably for waste, fraud, and abuse.
Right.
And at the same time, the concern is the continuity of services, assuring that there are the provider community. So it's a difficult time. And this is why the way that we have pivoted is we have these 7 life-sustaining dimensions to assure that we can assert that people with disabilities lead stable lives. And what are some of those 7 areas? Nutritious food. Transportation is a big issue.
Sure.
Healthcare, human services, education, social connectedness, and housing. And this is what we know, that when we can address those needs and people live stable lives, that leads to the vibrancy of community. That leads to A vibrant community leads to a sustainable economy. And so investing in the well-being of families, of children, of individuals with disabilities, and overall really leads to the vibrancy of community. You know, I'm often asked, you know, what is the primary human social organization of society?
Right.
It's not government. You know what it is? It's the family. So we can support people with disabilities to make certain that we're addressing these 7 life-sustaining dimensions, including PCA services and other services. We can help to advance the sense of stability that people need to live their lives with the greatest sense of those inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as well.
And it all goes back to our Constitution.
It certainly does.
You know?
It's exactly right.
And I don't think our policy people have a clue to even look at this and to think about it in this perspective.
Well, this is why security, benefit, and protection and fiscal notes are important. There's no question about that. Addressing the needs, and Minnesota is robust in how it thinks about this with its core values that has always been a part of Minnesota's society and culture, and at the same time that when folks take the oath of office to support that Constitution, Section 1, Article 1 of the Bill of Rights first really talk about instituted for the security, benefit, and protection of the people. And this is why we believe that as societies, whether people with disabilities in urban areas, in rural areas, in greater Minnesota, or in Minneapolis or St. Paul, wherever, that we actually have more in common when we think about the more we can assist people with stabilizing their lives so that they can live the lives that they have chosen to live. Why? Because the natural laws that guide the formation of our Constitution require it. You know, inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, of equality. And here's one, Joan, that I believe that is important, and that is human dignity, that we recognize it is self-evident that each person in the world has been endowed equally with human dignity. That means not only throughout the world, but throughout all time. And this is the basis for the care, and ultimately, by solving these issues, we advance the ability of people to care for one another. And I believe that's at the heart of who we are in Minnesota, and it's the heart of who we are as a democracy in the United States as well.
Michelle, what can you add to this conversation as we're looking at these real specific characteristics of our discussion here?
Well, one thing that I wanted to piggyback on a little bit of what Jesse was saying is that this isn't just about supporting people with disabilities, because when you support people with disabilities, you're supporting their family, you're supporting the economy, because we're out there and we're working and we're contributing to society. It's not, we're everywhere, as one of my mentees said. They said, I didn't know that people with disabilities were so active in the communities. I think there's a misconception that
We're all
we aren't
sitting at
active.
home.
Right?
Yeah.
We're not all home, you know, in our homes doing limited things. We're
Sure.
trying to be as active and contributory to society as we can be, which is why the asset limit being raised is important, why the constitutional rights are important, because we have a lot to offer society that gets overlooked.
Exactly. I mean, you kind of summed it up there. There's people with disabilities. We have a lot to contribute to society as individuals and as a group. What else can you add to this conversation, Jesse, that we can ask legislators to address here as we're trying to unravel this whole nut, so to speak?
Well, I think what's really important is that as our people are listening to this is to call the state to find out who their elected officials are. Now, in the state of Minnesota, you'll have a Minnesota state representative in the Senate, and you'll have a Minnesota House of Representatives who represent you as well. You'll have a mayor, and then of course we have the governor, and we have our elected officials, the U.S. senators and people in Congress. It's important that people have voice to express their concerns. And that's really the heart and the basis of democracy of, quote, we the people. And that's the most important part, is a resurgence of a sense of democracy, of the
Sure.
sense of the what I would call active civic participation.
Great.
Not only for the South, but that's what I think is really at the heart here of what we need to be
You
working
summed
on.
it up perfectly. Well, we're already out of time. That 15 minutes goes fantastically fast. Anyway, so I want to thank Michelle for coming on board to give the disability perspective, and Jesse Gomez, also from the Metropolitan Center for Independent Living. Just a fantastic discussion here about we the people.
That's right.
It's about the people. Thanks again for coming, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Disability Viewpoints. I'm Mark Hughes. It's my distinguished honor to introduce to you Kelly McDyre from the Child Loss Foundation. Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with all this and what's been your most rewarding moment. Let's start there.
Wow. Well, thank you first, Mark and Joan, for the opportunity to be with you today. Again, my name is Kelly McDyre. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called the Child Loss Foundation. I have been with the organization since 2012. When I got here, it was just called Faith's Lodge, but what we do and what we've always done is support parents who are grieving the death of a child.
That's 14 years if my math is right.
Yeah, it's a long time. It
Yeah.
feels like it.
Yeah.
So this sounds crazy to many people, but I love my job.
Yeah.
It is heavy and hard at some times. You hear a lot of stories of loss, but there is truly an energizing element to feeling like what you do for work is bringing hope and healing to other people.
Yeah.
And I do this work because in 2010, August 1st, 2010, my nephew, Carter Guyan, he was 12 years old. He died at a park in Roseville. He was playing and he was doing what 12-year-old boys do. And he made a slingshot and they were shooting tennis balls out of it and they ran out of tennis balls. So they started putting rocks in it.
Oh.
And that the slingshot backfired and
Yeah. Got him.
struck him in the chest, and he never came home that day. So my sister, like what I do, I'm inspired to do what I do because it helps families like my sister's recover from such really, really unimaginable loss.
I get it. I understand. So I've been at this a long time too, and it's a job, but it's compassion, and I still like it every day. But what inspires you to keep going, or what is your most memorable moment doing this? Because that gets to be some pretty rough stuff.
Yeah, there are a few moments that stick out. I come back every day because of the testimonials that we hear from people saying, I didn't know that there was a path forward until I found you and was able to connect with other grieving parents and other people who get it, who,
Right.
they share this awful common, membership to that club that no one wants to belong to.
Right.
And so there's one story at Faith's Lodge. So Faith's Lodge was how we started. And Faith's Lodge is a dedicated retreat facility that's open year round, that was built specifically to support grieving parents. And it was created by a Minneapolis couple whose daughter was stillborn in 1999. And her name was Faith. And so they decided, we want to create this place where people can go. And so when I first started at Faith's Lodge, I would go and I would be a weekend manager for retreats because we had full-time staff during the week, and then we needed people to help, facilitate retreats at the end of the week. So there was this couple that came, their child had passed away, and they came kind of late, and they didn't participate in any of the group activities. They didn't have dinner with any of the other families. They were kind of on their own. And I thought, oh, I feel so bad for them. When they left, I said, hey, you know what? If you want to come back, I'm the CEO. If you want to come back, it's on me, because I feel like maybe you didn't get the full impact of what a retreat can do for you. And the dad, you know, the bereaved mom left and went out to the car, and the dad came back to the desk and said, I got to tell you, I got everything I needed here. My wife and I haven't spoken much since our child died. We haven't connected. We have been in two separate worlds, and we got to spend time alone here. It's exactly what our marriage needed.
Yep, and connect and communicate.
Yeah, and it was amazing because I realized, oh, our formula for connection doesn't necessarily have to be everybody's formula, and everybody's grief journey is a little different. Everybody needs something a little different, and that was, it really inspires everything I do today when I think about the future and how we grow and what we do. It's really all about addressing each family's needs individually.
You know, it can be uplifting, but like I don't want to compare with a mortician, because it's really an unpleasant task when somebody loses somebody. But you're trained. How do you not get so emotional when the parents are having a problem that you don't fall apart too? How do you train yourself not to do that?
It's a really great question, Mark, because it's really easy to invest wholly in everybody's story that you hear. And I think, you know, one of the things that I had to figure out, and I have my own therapist, I'm okay saying that. I just need to remind myself that I'm not the only person that can help them.
Right.
And all I can do is do my best to deliver what I know I can and do well. And the rest will fall in place. And I cannot be everything to everybody.
Nope.
I can just do what I do.
Be all you can be, but you can't be everything. But you have to sell that the operation is here for them, and that you're here for them too. But there's certain limits.
Absolutely,
of doing that.
There are, and you know, I have been at this for 14 years. I have a 21-year-old and almost 19-year-old daughter.
You're busy, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I have to be able to come home for all those years, come home to my children and be present and not, you know.
Yeah, and be happy and not weeping,
Yeah, exactly.
So, as far as looking ahead for advancement for the operation, and you know, you're stalwart, you're going to be there running it. What do you see in the near future for this?
Well, really excitingly, this past year, May 1st, 2025, we changed our name from Faith's Lodge to Child Loss Foundation. And we did that after also acquiring or merging with another nonprofit with a very similar mission, the Believe Foundation. So the two of us came together and we became the Child Loss Foundation. And Faith's Lodge that I told you about is still Faith's Lodge. It's still called Faith's Lodge. It still does what it does. It's just now under the umbrella of this a little bit more obvious name. It felt, you know, for years when people heard, oh, the Believe Foundation or Faith's Lodge, you had to explain what each of those were. Now, as the Child Loss Foundation, it's a little bit more obvious what we do, and it's a shorter path to really people understanding. And so part of that rebrand and growth is serving more grieving parents in more ways. And so now with the Believe Foundation under our umbrella, we are able to help with immediate and practical financial support right after the death of a child. So imagine parents, you know, no one knows how expensive it is to bury somebody. It's really expensive.
It is.
And a lot of people don't have the money set aside for that.
Right.
So we can help with those types of things, or living expenses. We have touch points and can help them find therapy. We have a program called Child Loss at Work, which is an employer-sponsored benefit that helps transition a working parent back to work after the death of a child. This is a life-changing event.
Absolutely.
Employers aren't always good at it.
Yeah, I know it. And that's probably the best way to do what you just explained. Now, do you do any lobbying like the House and Senate and let the state know about this?
You know, we don't. We're not actively active on that political front. There is the founder of the Believe Foundation is really invested in making sure that people whose children are stillborn have the opportunity to get a birth certificate, because not every state offers that.
Yeah.
And he's been very active in not only Minnesota, but other states in making sure that stillbirth families get,
Right.
a birth certificate.
Right.
And so that's really the only area that we've even kind of peripherally
Yeah.
touched.
We're getting down to about 2 minutes left. Is there anything I've forgotten? I'm going to do the final word segment. Anything you want to say before we go? And I'm here to tell you that I'd like to talk to you more if there's a chance to connect, because I'd like to do something together in the near future.
I think the one thing I'd say is grieving parents come in all shapes and sizes from all walks of life. No one loss is more important than the other. And I think there are more grieving parents walking among us than we know. And I would say, if you know a grieving parent or are a grieving parent, feel free to reach out, check us out, see if there's anything that makes sense for you. Come to a retreat.
Right.
There are different ways to support other families as well. And we'd love to connect with you. So I think that would be my message to your viewers.
Great.
And I'm so grateful again for the opportunity to share our organization and our mission.
Great. How about a good phone number at the office we can call?
Sure. 612-825-2073.
And how about a general email? Can we get one of those?
Sure. info@childlossfoundation.org. Or
Very
you can
good.
just visit the website, childlossfoundation.org. It's all on there.
Well, Kelly Dyer from the Child Loss Foundation has been our guest. Appreciate her being here, and would like to have her back because I think good things are going to happen in that organization. We'll talk again soon. We'll be right back with more Disability Viewpoints in a moment. Well, this is Mark Hughes, and that does it for another edition of Disability Viewpoints. Kelly Dyer was our outstanding guest today from Child Loss Foundation. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of information. I see a lot of good things going to happen in that operation, so hopefully she'll come back on with us again real soon. Joan, tell us about your guest today.
Yes, the two guests from Metropolitan Center for Independent Living, Jesse Gomez, the executive director, and Michelle Vrieze, who is an assistant director there in administration at MCIL. We had very lively conversation around the fraud issue and how it is impacting people with disabilities in the state of Minnesota.
Very good. Well, that does it for Disability Viewpoints. For Joan Willshire and the entire team here at Disability Viewpoints and SPNN, I'm Mark Hughes. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Bye for now.